What's up, everyone? Today, we're going to take a look at what's known as as you can see right here, the conditional tense. And that's coming after the future tense. And the reason for that is because structurally, they're conjugated in very similar ways. And just for a bit of a side note, like I put up here, I put the future tense endings, right? And the reason I did that is because, again, this is coming after the future tense, and a lot of times these get taught sort of side by side. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but today's lesson is on the conditional tense. And so as far as the conditional tense is concerned, like its translation, it's would, right? Like I would study, I would run, we would walk, they would surf, you know, whatever you want to use with would, and that's your conditional tense. Your future tense, if you need a little refresher on that, just watch the other video. But the future tense, its translation is will. So I will run, we will surf, things like that, and that's the formal future tense. And so, like I said, if you need to brush up a bit more on the future tense, just watch the other video and then come back to us here in the conditional tense. But again, the structure itself is very similar. And again, that's why I say most of the time they're sort of taught one with another. But you know, again, just before we get going, I want to be very clear and say the future tense is its own tense and it means will, whereas the conditional tense is, again, its own tense and means would. What it shares in common are really two things. One, it's use of the infinitive plus a set of endings. So structurally, they both take the infinitive and then you add its appropriate ending to it. And what I mean by that is, in the case of the future tense, you use the infinitive plus these endings, right? And so again, I'm not going to go into the future tense, but I just want you to see, you know, some of the similarities between those two. Again, I want to focus on the conditional because, well, that's what the lesson's about. And so in terms of the conditional tense, like I said, you use the infinitive or an unconjugated verb, and then you would attach these endings to it. So, ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. And so actually, these are the imperfect endings for ER and IR verbs. So if you want to, you know, go back and look at the imperfect endings, something you've probably already spent a lot of time learning, you're really just taking the imperfect endings for ER and IR verbs and you're attaching it to the end of an infinitive. And that's going to create what we call the conditional tense, which translates, I'm just going to put one up here just so you can see what I'm talking about. We're going to put this, just a little, you know, right off the top of my head, some sort of sentence that uses the conditional tense. And we're going to use this black marker to highlight it. And so we have here, comería pizza, pero no me gusta queso. So I'm saying I would eat pizza, but I don't like cheese, for example, right? And so comería is your conditional tense. And notice what I've done here, right? I have the infinitive, which again is an unconjugated verb. So I've taken comer as a verb, and then I've attached the ending to it, right? And so just in case, for those of you that said, well, Jason, you know, you have ia and ia, so how do I know if, you know, who the subject is, for example? And in that case, that's a great question, by the way, but in that case, you can just clarify by putting the subject pronoun. Say, yo comería pizza, pero no me gusta queso. You can do that, and that's, you know, again, anytime there's any ambiguity when you're using this language, of course, you want to clarify by using the subject or subject pronoun or whatever, you know, to clarify who the subject of it is, because, you know, sometimes, as you can see here with subject-verb agreement, this one, yo, first person, in the case of the conditional, is the same as this one. So all we do is just put yo there, right? And that would make it clear who we're talking about. And so anyways, I sort of jumped ahead there, but I just wanted to show you all how the conditional tense is used, right? Again, infinitive plus ending. And we're going to get to that in a little bit when we look at these examples as well. So hopefully that will help make sense of all this. I want to get back to something I said at the top of this video, which was there's two things the future tense and the conditional tense have in common. And so again, just to reiterate, it is the use of the infinitive plus attaching an ending. That's the one thing it shares in common. The second thing it shares in common are right here, are the irregulares or irregular verbs in both the conditional and the future tense. And so I did my best to organize them for everybody. And so again, these are the exact same irregular verbs you'll find in the future tense. And so those just sort of carry over, if you will, into the conditional tense. So once you've spent time learning them for the future, you've already got it. And so those exact same verbs are going to be irregular for the conditional tense. But let's take a look at them again, just so for some it might be a bit of a review, and others it might be entirely new. So let's have a look at them. Like I said, I've put 13 on here. These are probably the 13 most used ones. There are more, particularly when we get into like prefixes and things like that. But I didn't see a reason in, bogging you down or overwhelming you with a whole board full of irregulars. So these are of course, the most common irregulars for both the future and the conditional. So let's have a look at what we have. I've gone as far as, I'm going to switch markers actually. Yep, I'm going to use this purple marker. And so I've gone as far as to divide them up by their ending. Now, these two, I'm going to just put that little face like that because I couldn't figure out a category to put them in, to be totally honest with you. And so they sort of stand alone in a sense in terms of how they work as irregulars. But, let's do that and that, not that one. That one has a partner. So again, I just put those there, and I put them here specifically to sort of break up the groups, if you will. So hopefully that was a little easier on the eyes. But again, we have those that are irregular that end in BR. For example, these three here, caber, saber, and haber. And I'll go over what they mean as well, just so everyone's on the same page. And then we have those that end in DR, which are poner, salir, valer, poder, tener, venir. Those end with the letters DR. And notice, this is another thing I want to make sure we're clear on. All of these, future and conditional, will all end with the letter R as you sort of springboard into your attaching your ending, if that made any sense. And so, but again, we'll work on that, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But again, you have those that end with BR, you have those that end with DR, and then, like I said, number 10 and number 11, decir and querer, sort of have their own little vibe going on. And so, as you can see here, this is DIR and then QUERR, so you get a double R there. And then 12 and 13 are, I just put irregulars that end with AR. So you have ar for hacer, and then you have satisfar for satisfacer, which means to satisfy. And so those are really your most common irregulars. And so that's a good list to set to memory when we're talking about the future and we're talking about the conditional. And so, and again, what are the irregulars here today under the conditional lesson? Again, are the very same irregulars under the future tense. And so I know that I've probably said that a number of times at this point, but I wanted to be clear about that. And so something else I did just sort of for fun, because I know that as we've been going through these lessons, you all are probably used to estar, ser, and ir being irregular. I mean, it is virtually irregular, not all the time, but a lot. And it's one of those are three that you all are used to. It's sort of like, okay, now tell me what estar, ser, and ir are going to be. I know they're going to be irregular, but I have good news. They're actually regular for the conditional tense and the future tense, right? And so I went ahead and conjugated them for you just for fun, just to prove to you that they were, in fact, irregular in this case. And so estar, we have estaría, estarías, estaría, estaríamos, estaríais, and estarían, right? And again, that's totally regular. You have your infinitive and then you attach your ending. No big deal. Ser is going to do the same thing. You have the verb infinitive and then you have your ending. And so you have sería, serías, sería, seríamos, seríais, and serían. Again, totally regular with ser and then attaching your endings. And again, lastly, ir, which was, as I've said, another one you're just used to being irregular, but for the future in the conditional, it's not. So again, we have our verb, right? Our infinitive, our unconjugated verb. We have iría, irías, iría, iríamos, iríais, and irían, right? And so that's how they work when it comes to infinitive and then attaching your conditional endings. Now, just so we're totally clear, I want to just show you all two things. One, I'm going to tell you what these mean. I'm going to bring you back over here and tell you what these mean. And then I'm just going to do a couple as an example so that you can see how, just to reiterate how the conditional endings just get, sort of put on the backside, this, attached to the R, of course. And so they're going to all end with R. So it makes for a nice smooth transition. Caber is to fit. Saber is to know. Haber is to have. Of course, it's a synonym with our verb tener. And as you all may or may not know already, haber is our helping verb for perfect tenses. And so this one is for the future and conditional perfect, you're going to use this irregular conjugation of it. So anyways, that was a little off topic. But poner is to put, salir is to go out or to leave, valer is to be worth, right? Poder is can or able to, tener is to have, venir is to come, decir is to say, querer is to want or like, hacer is to make or do, and then satisfacer is to satisfy. And so, so those are, as I've already gone over, those are our irregulars. And so, like I said, I just want to show you what I'm talking about in terms of attaching endings to irregulars, because it's really nothing different than what we did, over here. There's no real difference in terms of how it's attached. It's just attached to the end. And so, let's say, let's use, for example, let's see, we got number 12. I think I'm using that. I just want to make sure that's not being used over here. Let's use hacer. I would make scrambled eggs, but I don't have eggs. Let's say something like that. And so, because what I want to do is I want to use hacer, which is an irregular, in a sentence by using the conditional. And then that way you can see what I'm talking about in terms of combining it or attaching it to the ending of these irregular verbs. And so let's find some space, right? Right here is good. So we would say haría, yo, again, if we want to clarify, just so we know, I'm saying yo, right? Yo haría huevos revueltos. Right, that's how you say scrambled eggs. So huevos revueltos. So like revolved eggs, actually, is kind of what you're saying. So yo haría huevos revueltos, pero no tengo huevos. All right, so there you go. Something nice and simple. I would make scrambled eggs, but I don't have any eggs. So again, the conditional tense, as you can see here, is conditioned upon something. And so that's really what, when we use the term conditional tense, that's effectively what you're doing. It's conditioned upon something. And so in this case, making eggs, like I would make eggs, but I don't have, I would make scrambled eggs, but I don't have any eggs. So hopefully that makes sense. But most importantly, apart from writing that whole sentence out, was I wanted to show you that the irregulars, they're used in much of the same way. I mean, really, it's just an irregular form of that verb, but the endings just get put right beside that R, like it would in any other normal infinitive. So again, hopefully that made sense to you guys. The last thing I wanted to do is look at these examples here. Now, let's see what other markers we have. We got green. Let's do this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you notice, right here, number 3, we have fill in the blanks. And so what I want to do is, for the first 3, I wanted to walk you through and just focus on using the conditional tense. All right, and then the last 2, I'm going to leave them up to you to translate, and then we'll see what you come up with. And so, again, as always, if you want to hit the pause button, you can do these on your own and then, unpause or hit play, however you want to phrase that, and come back and see what we've come up with. And so, but again, for those of you who just want to move right along, I'm not going to stand still for 5 minutes and be silent. So we'll just keep plugging away. All right. So number 1 here, we have tú me dijiste que tú estudiar por la prueba. Prueba is just a quiz, right? And so that's how you say that word in Spanish. So you told me that, right? That you would study for the quiz. You told me that you would study for the quiz. So, the really cool thing about this is in much of the same way the conditional and even the future for that matter is used in English, it's going to be used very similarly in Spanish. And so that might prove to be helpful as well. And so that offers you a nice cozy translation. And so again, case in point is right here. And so again, let's get back to this. Tú me dijiste que tú estudiar por la prueba. So the subject of this sentence, or at least the second clause of the sentence, so this being the first and this being the second really clause, if you will, kind of broken up by this word, is tú. So if you said estudiarías, you would be right. And so we're going to write that in there. Estudiarías, right? And so notice we have infinitive, and then we add our ias. Why? Well, because that's for two. So that's how it's done. Again, let's take a look at number 2 real quick. And so yo, I thought I would use one of these from over here just so you could see how that was used in the sentence. And so yo ir al parque, pero hace frío hoy. I would go to the park, but it's cold today. And so for anybody out there that doesn't like cold weather, you can relate to this. And so ir is our verb, and I know maybe contrary to what you've been learning as far as ir in the past with all its other tenses, this time it's regular. And again, we showed you over here. And so hopefully those of you who hit pause and came back, you wrote iría, because it's yo iría al parque. And again, just, a little miniature grammar lesson inside this. A is the preposition to, and then it would be el parque. And so when we put a in terms of to, preposition, plus a definite article el, you put those together, that's why you get al, right? And so yo iría al parque, comma, but hace frío hoy. I would go to the park, but it's cold today. And so hopefully that one, for those of you that paused and tried it on your own, hopefully you got that one right too. Number 3, nosotros viajar más, pero no tenemos dinero. We would travel more, but we don't have any money, right? It takes money to travel. So, nosotros viajar, right? We want to put this in the conditional tense. We would travel more, but we don't have money, right? And so hopefully those of you that hit pause and you came back, you wrote, hopefully you can read that in there. I am going to take out my purple marker and make sure you all can read that. So we've got viajaríamos. So viajaríamos. It's almost 3D looking, by the way. And so nosotros viajaríamos. Why? Well, because this is the conjugation we're using because we have nosotros as our subject. And so nosotros viajaríamos más, pero no tenemos dinero. And so now moving on to number 4 and 5, this is going to be a bit more challenging, but if you really, if you hit pause and now you're back with us and you've gone through this and you're here and you get these right, you know, you're on point today. And so these are challenging, and so let's walk through these. We have, they would go to the beach, but it's raining. All right, and so they would go. Again, coming back over here, right, to ir, because we would say they would go, right? Again, would being the translation for the conditional tense, and go is ir. So we would say, we're going to say ellos, right? We're going to just assume it's a big group of males and females, and so because there is one single female in the bunch in our assumed trip to the beach, then we have to make it a third person plural masculine subject pronoun, ellos. And so ellos, they would, ellos irían, right? They would go to the beach. So again, we want to say to the beach. So a la playa, and then we're going to put our comma there. And I'm going to get rid of this because you already know what's going on over there at this point. Ellos irían a la playa, pero, right, this is our but, right? So they would go, and then so it's conditioned upon something, right? Well, they would go, but it's raining. And so, ellos irían a la playa, pero está lloviendo, right? And just, again, just a quick lesson on this one right here. Ellos irían a la playa, pero está lloviendo. Está lloviendo is a use of the present progressive, right? And so that is estar, the verb estar with a gerund, and that would give you that it is raining. And so that's that combination right there. And so hopefully those of you that tried this on your own, you got that right. And let's have a look at the last one. I would drink more coffee, but I already drank 4 cups. Now, for some of you, that's not a lot, but for others, you wouldn't sleep for 2 days. So, but either way, it's a fun example. And let's see, for those of you that went ahead and did it on your own, let's see if you got this right. I would drink. So now for drink, we have, I'm gonna write it up here, just it's probably easier. So you have beber and we have tomar, right? Now you could have used either one, right? And that was up to you, but we're gonna go with beber. And so I would drink, so bebería, right? I would drink. And again, if we want to clarify, there's nothing wrong with putting yo there because we want to say I would drink. Yo bebería más café, again, conditioned upon something, comma, pero. And then we can put, we want to say already, so we can say ya. We can kind of come right out of the gates with ya, or we can put it at the end, but I'm going to put it at the beginning of this. I would drink more coffee, but I already drank 4 cups. Yo bebería más café, pero yo ya, that gives us that already, ya tomé, I already drank. How many did we drink? 4. 4 tazas de café, right? And so let's stretch that one across the board there. And so, yo bebería más café, comma, pero yo ya tomé 4 tazas de café. So I would drink more coffee, but I've already drank 4 cups of coffee, is really what you're saying there. Now, I should probably put this inside parentheses because you could say 4 tazas and it sort of speaks for itself. But if you want to clarify what's inside that taza, you can have coffee, right? And so that's why I put de café. So yeah, let's finish with this purple marker. And so again, just to reiterate, we have yo bebería, right? We have our infinitive and then we have our ending. Más café, pero yo ya right? And you can even say, yo tomé 4 tazas de café ya. If you really want to put it at the end, you can do that. And so, but like I said, I opted for it right there. And so, yo tomé 4 tazas de café. So, I would drink more coffee, but I already drank, right? And notice again, that's just the use of the preterite. If that's something you need to review, check out the preterite video, right? And so that gets me that I already drank 4 cups of coffee. And so, yeah, so this is the conditional tense, and hopefully this was helpful for you guys in trying to wrap your head around this grammar, which is quite fun and quite useful. So thanks, and adios.